and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3693 and today's date is July 25th, 2025, and the title of the episode is Trump Exposed the Fed While on Tour. Will Trump give rebates to the people? Talk about your health. If you're over 40 and noticing your skin doesn't bounce back like it used to, your joints sound like bubble wrap when you stand, or that morning stiffness just won't go away, here's what's actually happening. After age 30, your body produces 1% to 2% less collagen every single year. By 60, you've lost over half your natural supply. It's not just aging, it's a collagen shortage. That's why thousands are turning to Sculpt Nation Multi-Collagen. Unlike typical collagen that only gives you one type, this has all three essential types your body needs, from grass-fed cows, chicken, and wild-caught fish. Users are reporting firmer skin in just weeks, especially in those areas that tend to sag. Many say their hairdressers are asking what they're doing differently because their hair looks thicker and fuller, and those achy, creaky joints, they're moving smoother and easier. Plus, it completely dissolves with no clumps, no taste, no grit, just pure collagen with added hyaluronic acid for extra joint support and skin hydration. Mix it in coffee, smoothies, or even water. Right now, Sculpt Nation is offering listeners up to 57% off their multi-collagen, plus a full 365-day money-back guarantee. That's an entire year to try it risk-free. This special pricing ends soon, so go to sculptnation.com/X22 report to get your multi-collagen today. That's sculptnation.com/X22 report, or click the link in the description. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see that Trump, he took a tour yesterday of the Federal Reserve. And he had something in his pocket that actually shocked Jerome Powell. And it showed that he was over in the cost of redoing the Federal Reserve. Now, of course, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell tried to play this off. But I think there was a very, very important message in all of this. And I do believe that Trump needed to show the people that the Fed has no idea what they're really doing. And I do believe in the end, Trump and the Patriots, they are going to continue to move us away from the Federal Reserve. Trump is bringing in a lot of money via the tariffs. He's making more and more deals every single day. We have Australia now accepting our beef, and other countries are going to get on board with this. I mean, really think about it. Why were countries holding back and accepting our food? Because once again, they wanted the farmers here in this country to basically go out of business. And they wanted us to accept food from every other country and not use our own farmers and our own food here in this country. It's almost like they wanted us to get oil from every single other country. They wanted us to get rare earth minerals from every other country. They wanted us to get food from every other country. They wanted us to become dependent on every other country. Trump is reversing all of this, and we're going to be independent. Now, Trump, he's looking at the tariffs. He's looking at how well everything is going, and he's realizing that we got a lot of money coming in right now. And he's looking at the situation saying, maybe we should give people the rebate. Maybe we should help them out a little bit. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, we should pay down the debt first. Maybe we should do this. But again, his entire system is not truly up and running at full capacity. And I do believe he has to look at the midterms at this point. And he needs to show the people that, look, everything that I'm doing, it's going to benefit you. By giving people the rebate, if he actually goes through with it, it will show people that, look, we have all this extra funds. The money could be returned to the people. Now, eventually what I do believe is going to happen is as the parallel system becomes stronger and it builds and it competes with the Federal Reserve, I think at that point he'll look at the situation and say, okay, we now are taking in enough money every single month where we can now pay for the internal revenue. We can pay for it using the external revenue. But again, are we there just yet? No, we aren't. Now, after August 1st, we'll have to see where everything stands. But I do believe with Trump selling the gold card, selling technology, selling energy, I do believe the amount of money that's going to be coming into this country is going to be absolutely amazing. And I don't think we have to worry about paying off the debt. I don't think we're going to have to worry about anything else. And I think at the end, the Federal Reserve is going to be absolutely removed. You could see every step of the way, Trump, the Patriots, what they're doing right now is they're dismantling the Fed. At the same time, they're exposing the Fed. And in the end, the people are going to demand that we no longer use the Fed, especially when they see Trump's parallel system up and running. We'll be talking a lot more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what's happening with the UN right now, because they're very pissed at Trump and the U.S. because the UN wants the U.S. to stay with their climate hoax. And Trump, he's saying we are not going to continue with the climate hoax. We don't want to have anything to do with it. He removed us from the Paris Climate Accord. And right now, you could see that the UN wants to sue the United States over climate. The International Court of Justice ruled this week that countries are required to cut emissions in the name of climate change. The White House responded to this and said the following: any decision from the court is non-binding, but far-left advocates are hopeful it will cause a chain reaction leading to domestic lawsuits and other legal actions. The case was reportedly brought before the United States highest court by small island countries seeking to force international standards onto larger governments. So you can see the deep state plan right now, the central bankers plan. Start the lawsuit. They know it's going to go nowhere. So they want individuals and smaller firms here in this country to bring a massive amount of lawsuits against the U.S. government. And this is how they attack the government. So they're kicking it off with this. But Trump, he gave, or the White House gave, a very interesting response to the UN, which is pushing the lawsuits. As always, Trump and the entire administration is committed to putting America first and prioritizing the interest of everyday Americans. This is coming from the spokeswoman, Tyler Rogers. We cannot be sucked into global affairs and follow edicts from other countries as we rebuild our own domestic infrastructure. Trump's move to withdraw America from Paris Climate Accords, something he already done in his first term, but had to do it again after Biden reversed it. The ICJ case specifically calls out the responsibility of industrialized nations to take the lead in limiting emissions. Are we supposed to believe that countries like China and Russia are going to have their feet held to the fire on pollution? The target seems to be the United States. Why? Because we have far-left lawmakers willing to throw trillions of dollars at an issue that hasn't even been fully settled. First, it was global warming because the polar caps were melting, setting up an ice age. Then, the argument shifted to temperatures getting hotter, and the phrase was switched to climate change. Every time a doomsday event was predicted, it got pushed off. The day after tomorrow never came. That's a red flag number one. Red flag number two is the potential money laundering aspect. After laundering tactics were exposed inside the USAID by Elon Musk's Doge team, what's to stop climate change funding from being used as personal piggy banks? During the Obama years, the firm Solyndra had the federal government co-sign a loan for over $500 million in solar technology before it went under. The same Forbes piece highlighted how several firms were given hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funds, yet they all failed. Where did all the money go? And once again, we know what this is about. This is about taxing the people. This is about money laundering. This has nothing to do with the climate. Because think about it. Who are the real polluters in this country? Is it the U.S. or is it China? Think about it for a second. And is this going to work? Absolutely not. Just like everything else the D's do. It doesn't, all the things they do, it doesn't work. They put out a post on X, and they try to convince people that Trump's economy is making food prices, grocery prices, move higher and higher and higher. And they put out a graph showing cheese, alcohol, grocery, dairy, produce, meat. And they said, look, this is Trump's America. See how everything's getting more expensive? And then people started to call out the D's because everyone started to realize, wait a minute, the graph starts in 2019. During 2019 to 2020, the prices were very, very low. Then when Biden came into office in 2021, when he was inaugurated, all of a sudden, the prices shot up. And everyone said, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with Trump. Actually, when you look at this, it's all Biden. And you know what the D's did? They deleted their post because it seems that they don't know how to read graphs, which is very, very interesting. And you have to remember something very, very important. Grocery prices and everything else, all the inflation that you're feeling, it's cumulative. So if, for example, if Biden brought the inflation rate up to 9%, which he did, and then he brought it back down to 3%, that doesn't go away. It stays. Now, you can counter it by lowering energy costs to put more money back into the people. You can lower the energy costs so it doesn't cost that much to deliver the food. But that inflation always stays. It never disappears. And you could see that the deep state players, the Ds, they had to backtrack on all of that. And you can see with the Fed, since they're not lowering their rates, they're really hurting the economy, especially the home sector, because people are finding it very, very difficult to sell their homes. Because again, what happens is when you keep the rate up high, it kicks a lot of people out of the market. Their buying power decreases. And this is why we see U.S. existing home sales, they fell to negative 2.7% month on month in June, to an annual rate of 3.93 million, the lowest in 9 months. Kobisi letter on X put this out and said, existing home sales are now near their lowest level in 15 years. By comparison, the pre-pandemic average was approximately 37% higher. This comes as higher mortgage rates are keeping home sales stuck in a cyclical lows. Meanwhile, the median sales price rose 2% year on year last year to a record of $435,000. The housing market remains historically unaffordable. This is why Trump is continually putting out the message, hey, Fed, you need to lower the rates. You're hurting the housing market. And think about it. Going back to pre-pandemic levels, the interest rate, the Fed rate, was very, very low, which allowed a lot of people into the market. And there was very little bit of inflation. And people had good jobs. And there were jobs aplentiful. So as of right now, you can see the only thing that Trump needs, he needs the Fed to lower their rates. But they're doing it on purpose. They're keeping it high. Why? Because, again, it's political. Secondly, I do believe they're waiting for some type of an event so they could say, see, inflation is moving up. Thank God we didn't lower the rates. And Trump keeps saying, listen, lower the rates. If something happens or inflation returns, you raise the rates. Let me ask you a question. Are you looking to shed some pounds for this summer? Well, a recent study found nearly half of patients following popular weight loss trends quit within a year, often used lower than prescribed doses and ultimately lost less weight than they were led to believe. This is why I use this secret amazing new product, and I'm obsessed with the results. It is designed to naturally support my body's own GLP-1 production and boost levels by over 50% without drugs, prescriptions, or needles. It promotes the feeling of fullness, reduced cravings, reduced my hunger hormones, helps me lose fat instead of muscle, and supports healthy blood sugar levels. Summer is here. It's time to get that beach body ready. Grab yourself a bottle of GLP-1 now to save up to 44% only at trimwithx22.com. Plus, you also get 2 free ebooks titled The 3-Week Diet and 53 Fat-Burning Smoothies and Milkshakes. Once again, this offer is only available at trimwithx22.com. That is trimwithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. Just like they did with Biden. Just like they've done with in the past. But again, they're waiting for something, which I do believe. Now, Trump, he did take a tour of the Fed, which we'll be talking about in just a sec. But you could see Trump now, he's looking at all the different corporations here in the United States, and he's asking Google, Microsoft, and many other companies to stop hiring people out of this country. And he's saying that you need to start hiring American workers. We'll have to see how that all goes, because you have to remember a lot of these companies, a lot of these CEOs, they're not on Trump's side. But eventually what's going to happen, I do believe they're going to have to fold, just like Australia had to fold, and now they're accepting American beef. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, after many years, Australia has agreed to accept American beef for a long time, and even though we are great friends, they actually banned our beef. Now, we're going to sell so much to Australia because this is undeniably and irrefutable proof that U.S. beef is the safest and the best in the entire world. The other countries that refuse our magnificent beef are on notice. All of our nation's ranchers, who are some of the hardest working and most wonderful people, are smiling today, which means I'm smiling too. Let's keep the hot streak going. It's the golden age of America. And yes, what's going to happen is most likely Trump is going to be placing a lot of tariffs on those countries that aren't accepting the beef from this country. And why weren't they accepting the beef? Because, again, you know, the deep state players, the central bankers, they wanted us to be dependent on every other country. Now Trump is turning this all around. And Trump's tariffs, they are working. He's already generated $113 billion in revenue, and he is pushing key trading partners to the negotiating table. And we can see that China is now on deck. They're being fleshed out. We see the European Union, they're going to be close to making a deal. We'll have to see how that all plays out. And even if they don't, you know what's going to happen? They're just going to get hit with a very high tariff percentage come August 1st, because that's when the bill comes due. And let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, like we said yesterday, Trump decided to take a tour of the Federal Reserve. A lot of his administration were pushed out. They were giving them virtual tours. But the president of the United States said, no, I would like to go into the Federal Reserve. I would like to take a tour. And what's very interesting is that Trump let Jerome Powell know that this entire project is over budget. It went from $1.9 billion to over $3.1 billion. And as soon as Trump pulled out of his pocket the piece of paper that showed this, Powell disagreed and interrupted, saying, I'm not aware of that. That's when Trump pulled out his receipts with a document from the Fed. Powell then tried to argue with Trump and says he's wrong because Trump included a building that was part of the overhaul. Powell said he does not expect additional cost overruns, but we're ready for them, and we have a little bit of reserve that we may use. We expected to finish in 2027, he added. Following this humiliating exchange with the Fed, reporters met with top Trump finance officials outside of the building complex. CNN's Caitlin Collins challenged the Trump officials on the total cost of the Federal Reserve renovation project. President Trump's OMB General Counsel Mark Paoletta later produced the goods for the fake news media. Trump is 100% correct in the numbers he used on his tour of the Federal Reserve. The FRB documents show FRB 2022 budget adopted in November 2021 was $1.4 billion for the Eccles and 1951 building portion of the FRB headquarters project, and a total budget for all three buildings comprising the FRB headquarters, including the Martin building, of $1.8 billion. FRB 2025 budget shows costs for Eccles and 1951 are now $2.5 billion, a more than $1 billion cost overrun for the current project, all incurred after Trump 45, and bringing the total cost of the Fed's headquarters renovation for all three buildings to $3.1 billion. Trump visited the Federal Reserve to try to encourage Powell to finish this job without any more cost overruns and get it done quickly. Now, think about what Trump just did here. Trump basically exposed the Fed. Remember, the Fed is supposedly running the economic system here. Remember, they have 24,000 PhDs, and they're supposed to keep the entire system working flawlessly. And we can see from the past, that's not true whatsoever. So when you start to look at this, you could see what Trump was doing. He was exposing the Fed, because if they cannot manage a renovation and they have cost overruns and the Fed is not aware, the Fed chair is not aware of this, or he's trying to lie to the president of the United States when they actually have the records, how in the world are they going to manage the country? How are they going to do it if they can't even do it in their own house? Think about that for a second. That tells you everything you need to know. And I do believe Trump did this on purpose to expose the Feds. Look, this guy has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't even know that there were overruns, and they can't even keep the budget. So if they can't do that, how are they managing the U.S.? Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said the following: "It was a great honor to tour the renovation and some new construction of the Federal Reserve Building with Chairman Jerome Powell, Senator Tim Scott, and others. It's got a long way to go. Would have been much better if it were never started, but it is what it is, and hopefully it will be finished ASAP. The cost overruns are substantial, but on the positive side, our country is doing very well and can afford just about anything, even the cost of the building. I'll be watching and hopefully adding some expertise. As everyone knows, I renovated the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue, and it was a roaring success. The total construction cost was a small fraction of the Fed's building costs, and it is many times the size. With all that being said, let's just get it finished and, even more importantly, lower the interest rates. Absolutely. So basically, Trump, he just exposed the entire Fed. And what's very interesting is that a reporter asked Trump a simple question. This is coming from Rapid Response 47. As a real estate developer, what would you do with the project manager who would be over budget? Trump said, generally speaking, what I would do, I'd fire him. And he said this right in front of Jerome Powell. That tells you everything you need to know. Now, Trump, he's letting everyone know that he thinks that Jerome Powell is going to be cutting the interest rates. We'll have to see how this all plays out. We'll have to see if he actually makes this move. Again, Trump is putting a lot of leverage on him. He's being investigated. He was just now exposed where they have this cost overrun. He's exposed, showing the American people that the Fed has no idea what they're doing. They can't even manage their own business. So was this enough to have the Fed lower the rates? Because remember, I do believe there's a lot of pressure on Powell from the deep state side saying do not lower the interest rates whatsoever. We're going to have an event. Of course, they're not saying it in that way, but they're saying, no, you keep steady. You don't lower the rate. Trump now is coming from the other side saying, listen, you're being investigated to lie in Congress. I just exposed you, showing that you have no idea what you're doing. I think it's time that you lower the rates. And we'll have to see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we can see that Trump now is going to be using Pell Grants for the trades. The U.S. Department of Labor put this out and said, thanks to POTUS, one big, beautiful bill, people can get Pell Grants to pay for workforce training courses, a game changer for students pursuing the trades. And we need these students to actually have a skill in this country. Because right now, all we have is people studying gender crap. And we need people that can work with wood, electricity, plumbing, technology, you name it. And I do believe this is going to transform America as we go on. Will it happen right away? Of course not. It's going to take a little bit of time because we have to reverse everything the deep state has been doing. And Trump, he let everyone know that he might be giving people a rebate. Right Angle News Network put this out and said, President Trump is now stating that due to the massive amount of money coming in thanks to tariffs on countries, he plans to give it back to the United States citizens in the form of rebate. Now, I do believe that Trump, he knows the midterms are coming up. He knows that he wants to show the people, look, the parallel system is working. We're bringing in tons and tons of money. Let's give the people a little taste of what is going on here. And you know what's going to happen when people get it? People are going to feel good. They're going to feel happy. Most likely, they'll probably put it back into the economy. He knows this. This will build the economy up. And when you buy American, this will help the American manufacturers. And since people got this, they'll be very happy going into the midterms. Does this mean that he's going to use all the money and the coffers will be empty? No. He's going to continually have more and more come in. Remember, the bill for all the different countries comes up on August 1st. And those countries that did make a deal, we're going to be taking in billions of dollars. And this doesn't even include energy sales, the gold card, technology sales. It doesn't include any of that. And I do believe Trump just wants to give the people a taste because, again, yes, you could talk percentages. You could talk, oh, look how much money we have. You could talk about all these things. But until people actually feel it and understand it, they don't really get it. Now, I know there's going to be people making the argument, hey, he's got to get rid of the debt first. I do believe he's going to be getting rid of the debt with the gold card and maybe even with energy sales. And again, I do believe we have to go through a review and audit to see if this debt is actually all ours. And when I say all ours, is it really the people's debt? Most likely not. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that the Fed is losing money every single year. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent put this out and said, the Fed is losing $100 billion a year. Now, it is blowing even more taxpayer money on an out-of-control building renovation. Time for an internal review. So if you notice, Bessent continually brings up the idea that we need to review the Fed somehow, some way, which means it's an audit. That's what he really means. Now, of course, can the president just say we want to audit you? No, it has to be Congress. Congress has to vote and say we must audit the Fed now. He's building this up, the narrative up. Remember, the Fed is losing money. Brian Cates responded to this and said, Understand they're preparing the country for the big reveal. They still have to say the Fed has been losing $100 billion a year. Everything has to be ready when pull that globalist elite curtain all the way back and show where the lost $100 billion year actually goes. And yes, we're going to see a lot of criminal activity, and we're going to start to realize that, yeah, the Fed has never been working for the people. The Fed has been lying to the people every step of the way. Now, it's very interesting, and Joe Lange put this out. He thinks that one way of bringing down the entire Federal Reserve System is to use silver. And this is what he put out: a controlled demolition of the Fed and the fiat debt system. Here's an interesting possibility that I don't think anyone is contemplating. How do you get rid of the Fed and the fiat currency at the same time? How do you create the crisis moment which brings the fiat financial system to the precipice? Is Trump about to trigger the financial crisis that brings down the Fed? What's the trigger? The same trigger that caused the 2008 financial crisis? Is Trump about to forcibly trigger the short squeeze in silver? Here are two important actions that Trump has recently taken that should have been really eye-opening for a lot of people. Number one, in February 2025, Trump signed an executive order titled Addressing the Threat to National Security from Imports of Copper, initiating a Section 232 investigation under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to assess the national security risk associated with the U.S. dependence on copper imports. Number two, Trump announced a 50% tariff on copper imports starting August 1st, 2025, in order to bolster the domestic copper industry and address national security concerns. This decision follows a national security assessment and is aimed at countering what the administration perceives as a threat from foreign dominance in the copper market, particularly from China. Copper is a vital metal used for military weapon systems, electric vehicles, renewable energy, advanced electronics, and infrastructure. Copper is of vital importance for our country's national security. Guess what happened the day Trump announced 50% tariffs on copper imports? The price of copper spiked big time. Copper prices surged dramatically when Trump announced a 50% tariff on copper imports. Following the announcement, copper futures rose 13% to 17% in a single day, marking the biggest one-day move in the commodity's history. The price of copper hit a record high, reaching $5.68 per pound on the COMEX platform, which translates to $12,526 per metric ton. This represented a premium of more than $2,920 per ton over the price of on the London Metal Exchange, which serves as the global benchmark. The announcement caused U.S. copper prices to rise to a 26% premium over their London equivalent. This is the key. When Trump announced a 50% tariff on copper imports, copper made the biggest one-day price move in the history and hit an all-time high. The premium in the U.S. was 26% higher than the London Metal Exchange. The London Metal Exchange is where the cabal controls and manipulates metal prices, not just copper, but gold and silver too. The London Metal Exchange no longer controls or can manipulate the copper price. Can you see the possibility of what is coming? Is silver also used in military weapon systems, electric vehicles, renewable energy, advanced electronics, and infrastructure? The answer is yes. Doesn't that make silver important for national security too? Is reliance on silver imports also a national security threat? Do you realize how important silver is for the defense industry? Silver has the highest electrical and thermal conductivity of all metals, making it essential for military electronics, radar systems, communication equipment, and guidance systems where performance under extreme conditions is vital. Additionally, silver is used in night vision devices, thermal imaging, and laser targeting system due to its superior reflectivity, especially in the infrared spectrum. Its antimicrobial properties also benefit medical and hygiene applications in the field, such as wound dressings and water purification systems. The Department of Defense identifies silver as the most widely used precious metal in its operations, underscoring its strategic importance. What happens if Trump announces a big tariff on silver imports? Do you know what would happen to the silver price? Which metal is more valuable and also more rare, copper or silver? Silver, by far. And I do believe once he does this, we're going to see gold actually react to all of this. Because remember, there is a ratio between gold and silver, and it's been widening over time. This, I do believe, is going to bring that ratio back to where it's supposed to be. Remember, The deep state players, they just don't manipulate gold with the paper market. They manipulate silver with the paper market, and they do it on purpose. Because you have to remember, going back in time, yes, gold was used as money, and silver was also used as money. And they needed to make sure that no one would use these metals as an alternative currency. But we can see at this point in time, everything is about to change. And I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they're setting all of this up to move us from one system to another. This has been done many, many times before throughout history, especially here in the United States. I mean, in 1913, we didn't have a central bank, and then all of a sudden we had a central bank. Before World War II, we weren't the reserve currency, and then we became the reserve currency. Before 1971, we were on the gold standard, and then after 1971, we're off the gold standard. During the 2008-2009 crisis, the central bank didn't have full control. And then all of a sudden the crisis hit, they had full control and they controlled everything. So it's not that far-fetched to say, hey, Trump is creating a parallel economic system and we're going to be using alternative currencies and we can make the move from the Federal Reserve System into the new system. We've done it many, many times before. And think about how many currencies we've had in this country. We've had many, many different types of currency in this country. So I do believe that this is a possibility. I do believe it's going to happen. And I do believe Trump is now setting the stage for all of this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.